Right, anyway, so here we are back, and I have done services, and there are people on Facebook who have seen me do this, where I have my back to the audience and I'm blindfolded and I have somebody else answer for the recipient. So I don't see any body language and I don't hear them, and yet I still give accurate information. I also can't get body language on a telephone, can I? And I always make sure that people only say yes or no, or I don't understand. In other words, could you explain a bit more? And if that's what happens, then I go back to the person and I say, can you give me a bit more on that, please, inside my head? And, you know, and then something will happen. And some of the things you get are really funny. I remember, and this was in a church, and it wasn't one of these, you know, I wasn't blindfolded or anything at the particular time, and I was giving this message to this woman, and the message was from her father, and the whole time I'm talking to him, I keep seeing an ice cream and a chicken. And I thought, someone's taking the pee here. What on earth does that mean? And eventually I told the woman, I said, look, while the whole time we've been talking, I keep seeing an ice cream, you know, an ice lolly, and a chicken. And she started to laugh and cry all at the same time. And it turns out, strangely, have you ever heard of anything like this, that her dad had a one-legged chicken and he made it a false leg using ice lolly sticks. No way I could have guessed that. And I didn't actually say, oh, your dad's telling me he had a chicken for which he made a false leg with ice lolly sticks. No, I saw a picture of a chicken and an ice lolly, because it ain't up to me to put it all together. It's up to the recipient. It's what it means to them that's important, not what it means to me. One really interesting thing that happened, as occasionally does, you will get a recipient when you're doing a church service or a service in a hall or whatever. Sorry, I keep calling them church services, but it's not necessary to, because a lot of them are just meetings in halls, and I prefer to call them a meeting. But anyway, this particular night the service went perfectly alright, and then I got a messenger that nobody could understand. One person did, well, thought they did, and then started to say, no, this actually doesn't make sense. And what I got was somebody who was in their 90s when they died, a lady. I said, and they sort of died in their sleep. They were unconscious when they died. They were sort of here one minute and not the next. And I said, she's talking about there being, I can't remember the exact details now, but it was something about one person having 2 weddings, but the previous person wasn't dead. Something like that. Anyway, to cut a long story short, the message was not accepted. The description of the woman and the other details that she gave me. Oh, and she said about somebody having to leave, that's right, 2 people in the family had to leave the armed forces because of medical conditions, one of which had to do with the stomach, and I can't remember what the other one did. And so it's quite a while ago now I did this, and I can't remember the exact details. But anyway, so I left it, and it rather bothered me, but it was the end of the service, it was time for me to go home, and I went home. John asked me how it went, and I said, well, it went fine, except, you know, the last recipient no one would take. And thought no more of it, although I still felt uncomfortable. Anyway, we later on get a phone call to say that John's mother had passed at the age of 93. And something in me suddenly thought, oh. So I said to John, I said, you know, the recipient that I got was 93, and she was a woman, and she was short. And no one would take her. And she told me this, and she told me that, and she told me the other. And John was able to understand all of it. The 2 people invalidated out of the army. All the information she gave me. So, been her mother. His mother, I mean. And see, she was already dead, although technically, you know, her body was being kept alive, but she was dead. So that was interesting, to say the least. You know, I've had children tell me what had been put in their coffin with them. I had another woman whose mother told her not to just get the house fumigated and cleared out and sold, because she must go into her bedroom first and look under the bed. The mother was a bit, and lived sort of like a hermit even in her own house. Anyway, she found in the suitcase a load of money and bonds and things, and so the young woman ended up having an awful lot of money, not just the house, but a whole load of other things like shares, etc, 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 which she would never have known she had, I guess. And then, well, that's just the way it works, you know. It comes in images and feelings, and yes, and I have had things about the future, not just about my own, but about other people's future, and specific things too, which you couldn't make up. I never get anything bad about people, and even if I did, I would never tell them, but I don't. But I have predicted 3 deaths. But in all 3 situations, I was asked to. One was a lady, a relative, who was dying of cancer, and she wanted to know when, and I told her 2 weeks today, and that's exactly what happened. And then I was asked to go, and the first time I was ever asked to do this, I was asked to go and see a dying woman. And I really didn't want to. This was a long time ago now. I would have been in my late 20s. And I'd never done this. I'd never really seen a dying person before either. But I went, because I trusted the people who asked me. And I went and saw this woman, and she looked all right to me. I mean, she was in a hospital bed, but she didn't, apart from looking elderly, she didn't look dead. Or dying, I mean. But you know, I felt that room was full of people. I could just feel them all there. You know, and they were with this woman, and I felt such a nice feeling. It wasn't a scared feeling or an upset feeling or anything. It was just like I'd walked into some gathering and they were all waiting for her. Anyway, I started to describe who I could see, and I described this man. I gave quite a bit of detail about him and about his work and about his hobbies, and she accepted that as her father. And then I started to describe her mother. She accepted that too. And then there was this other woman there, and I said, something's gone wrong here. I said, because this woman says she's your mother, but you've just accepted this other one as your mother. And the woman said, yes, that's right. And I started to describe the other woman. She said, well, I don't know what that other woman looked like. But yes, I do have 2 mothers. And I looked at her and I thought, how can you have 2 mothers? Because I was being dim. And she said, I was adopted. How about that? Anyway, this woman also wanted to know when her time was, because she'd had enough. And as I said, don't forget, I thought she looked perfectly well. She had liver cancer. To me, she looked fine. Couldn't believe there was anything wrong with her. But anyway, I said, okay, do you want me to say everything that I'm picking up and feeling? She said, yes, I'm not worried about anything. She said, I'm ready. And I said, well, they're all going now. They're going from my awareness. I said, but your father says he's going to come back for you on Saturday morning. And she just smiled and said, good. Now, Saturday morning was only a couple of days hence. And sure enough, Saturday morning comes, and this lady passed away. Now, it's up to you. You can either believe I'm lying through my teeth, or you can think about it. Why would I, for a start? Don't make any money out of this. Anyway, that's it for today. Bye.